Welcome back. I am Michael Lynch, and this is the Men Seeking Freedom podcast. We are not just a podcast, but we are a community of men. And the reason we have this business is we want men to no longer suffer in silence. We want men to communicate better because when they can't articulate their feelings and their fears, it can impact their family. It can impact their career. It could impact their faith. And what we do with the podcast is we bring in great people to speak directly to that audience. So without further ado, today's kind of a unique situation. We're spanning the globe. We're reaching out to the great country of Slovenia, and we're bringing in Blaz, whom we worked together for a few minutes prior to this, practicing his name so that we could treat him with respect. Blaz, welcome. Thank you for bringing an international feel to the Men Seeking Freedom podcast. Introduce yourself to this audience.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I love to be here. And so as you said, so my name is Blaz Marolt, yes, with the hard R. And I am a West Point graduate. So I graduated from the U.S. Military Academy of West Point in 2012. I went back to the Slovenian military. And in 2017, after I got my MBA, I left the military and I worked in several different positions. So from a plane production director to a chief of staff to regional ops director in, as I said, like 5 different industries. And now I'm pretty much on my own solo. I'm an entrepreneur where I help small businesses actually support them with their operations and allow entrepreneurs to seek freedom so they have more time for themselves and everybody else around them.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, when you were talking about your past a couple of years ago, you were involved in a career coaching company.
Yes.
As someone who personally had what I called many career identity crises in his life, just give a little synopsis on what you were doing in that world. I know you said you were working as a chief of staff, but considering that some of the men you're speaking with right now may not feel like they're in the right job, but they know they need to be a provider. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we were specifically working with the Service Academy graduates at that point. So West Point, Navy, and Air Force. But what often happens when you're in a career that you don't want, or you think you deserve something better, but you don't know where to go, is that we often can't or don't know how to communicate our value and what we bring to the table to the prospective employer, right? And then, as it always happens, is we go on either LinkedIn job post and we click easy apply and just hope that 2,000 or thousands of our applications are actually going to get accepted. And then, of course, when they don't, we become discouraged, probably depressed, and says, hey, everything is nothing, like I don't have any value. I feel like completely beaten down. Whereas what we did at that point was we helped people show their actual value with communicating through their LinkedIn profiles. And of course, we rearranged their resumes and CVs and then actually get connected with the correct decision makers, AKA the people that were hiring them, and actually almost bypassed the recruitment process. Because in the end, and everybody can just think about this in their head, which jobs did you get when you knew somebody or somebody referred you to another person? And that's around 80% of the jobs get filled because we know somebody. And what we did was we just put in an unfair advantage to those people so that they could actually bypass this and actually get hired to the position that they deserve and they wanted to.
Let me use an American term here. You have opened up a can of worms in reference to I've never been in the employment business, but I've always looked at the whole process of, okay, how do I create the perfect resume? And to make certain it plays to the perfect job description, which I've always found job descriptions to be, they obviously paint the picture of the job, but they can be a little bit, I always would look at the list and go, I can do some of that stuff. I don't know if I want to do some of that stuff. And so I like where you're going with, we're really locking into a specific vulnerability now, because I think what you just said is so true of, obviously you've done the work with helping the person go from, wow, this is just a rejection machine if I'm rifling out resumes, to what there's actually hope for people who get rejected. Because yeah, which then is trigger, if you're getting rejected and you're not happy in your job, what does that end up leading to? You have two choices: suffer in the job, or just get fed up, depressed, whatever, and leave the job. And neither of those options is a good one. So what you said you were doing was working on the, go again a little bit deeper in that, in terms of, so the person who's got the resume but getting rejected, you're obviously telling them, there's a different way you can present yourself. If you don't mind, get a little more granular in explaining that part.
Yeah. The one thing that we often don't understand about ourselves, right? When I always say it, when we're in our zone of genius, like what we do really well, we often just think of this, hey, that's normal. Like I do this, so everybody else apparently is doing the same thing. They're really good at it, right? But what actually happens is we're really good at that. And this is where our views are skewed. And then when we're presenting ourselves either on LinkedIn or in interviews, we tend to downplay that because we just think that's completely normal. But no, actually, those kinds of things are setting us apart. And those are the ones that we should double down and then just check, what have I been doing in my job or even in my personal life that can align with the job that I want or the position that I'm actually applying to? Because, and if we just go back to the positions, what the employers are actually pushing out, right? They're all BS pretty much. They're like a list of Make-A-Wish Foundation pretty much of, hey, I really want you to have all of this, but we already know that you're probably going to have only 50% of this, but we're going to be okay of you only having 25% of those when we're in the interview, if we like you. And a lot of the times, especially if I'm looking at myself and people who are competent but can't communicate or are a little bit afraid of also putting themselves out into the world, right? And fearing the rejection is, oh, I'm just not qualified enough. Exactly what you said before, Michael, right? It was like, oh, I can do 50% of them, but I'm just not going to apply because there's probably a lot more competent people. No, the ones that are actually applying there are usually the ones that are best at selling themselves. And then we're selling ourselves short because we're like, hey, this is not for me. And I'm going to apply for that low-level position, entry-level position, where they're going to be paying me minimum wage in the rest. And what we need to do here is really dig deep down on what we're really good at. Check the numbers that we were doing, because recruitment people, right, love numbers. Hey, I expanded my profitability by 15% here. I saved this much money and that much money. And we always need to check this and put it on the top. Be completely selfish in this, in promoting yourself, because in the end, a recruiter is or a hiring manager is gonna check your resume for about 7 seconds, and then they're not gonna do anything else. And if they like it, they're gonna read a little bit more, usually 30 seconds, but then they're gonna be inviting you onto the interview, or they're gonna be pretty much deleting the email and saying, hey, I don't want to work with this guy.
Blaz, but I invested 10 hours in writing my resume. You're telling me they're looking at it at maybe 7 to 30 seconds. One of the things I want to jump back, because you really hit another area. You use the term zone of genius. Now, I don't know how it is in the culture in Slovenia, but when you talk to people in this country, I'll use like friends and peers as an example. And and I love your term, but if I randomly went up to them and said, what is your zone of genius? You know what the first reaction to that would be? They'd be very uncomfortable, because they don't think of them. I understand the term genius could be a slight exaggeration or whatever, but it's designed to try to hyper focus someone on what they're better at. And like you said, they're not giving themselves credit for it. I use the term, use zone of genius. I use, what are you gifted with? And I think it's very easy, and you implied this, where when you do things as simple that it's so simple to you that it's like breathing, you automatically diminish how important can that really be if I can do that stuff. And I think where you're going is the more acquainted you get with the stuff that comes easily and you can talk about it easily, that's going to stick with a hiring manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually why I use zone of genius is exactly like what you said. People are uncomfortable, but they will remember that phrase. And it's, yes, what are you good at? What are you doing? But if I asked you, Michael, what are you good at? That would like almost lower the pressure from you. Whereas if I say zone of genius, I talked about probably for about 2 minutes there when I was giving you the answer, but you focus really on this one and you want to talk about it more. So this is what I want to make sure that people then start thinking, what are they really good at?
One thing I want to share with the audience, and I'd love your feedback on this, Blaz, is I do a lot of reading. And one author in particular was talking about how everyone who's working right now should go through an exercise of a little sheet of paper, 3 columns. First column, what are the things I do daily that I just despise? The middle column is I can do these things, can't really say I love them or don't. And then this particular author used the term, what do you do in your job that captivates and inspires you? And I remember it was almost like the author had given me permission to think about it. I don't think anyone's ever asked me what captivates and is in the angle this particular author was talking about. He was talking to entrepreneurs, believe it or not. And he was saying, the more you can understand the captivating and inspiring column, the more you can then work at here's another American thing. You got to work on your weaknesses.
Oh, that's stupid. That's the stupidest thing ever.
Bush, do you have a hammer there? Can you pull out and just start hitting yourself in the head with it? That's what that exercise is. But what this particular author was saying was, be focused on what those. So now we're getting zone of genius, captivating, inspiring is zone of genius. And then how, from an entrepreneur's perspective, how can I delegate to people who do those things I don't do well? And that's their zone of genius.
Exactly. This is like what I also do with the people that I work with, business owners. It's like, those are probably going to be the second or third thing that we're going to be doing. What do you like doing? What gives you energy? And what takes energy away from you? Because if it's taking away energy, when you have to decide 50 or 60 different decisions in the day, they're going to be taking away your energy. And then you're not going to have the time to actually do things that you need to do. And like you said, when you find this, you delegate or you just cut them out. Are they even important what you're doing? Because some guru online told you something about, oh, you really need to do this, or you need to make a perfect website or perfect something. And even though you don't even have a website, you don't need it as a business owner or whatever. And because they told you, you're doing it. And you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy for a profit or for some return on investment that will never happen. And yeah, exactly.
Blush, there's a couple of things I want to cover with you here today, and we'll get ultimately to a bit about your personal story of overcoming some of the things you have. But since you opened the door there, tell the audience about, as you referenced your journey to get to this point, and you alluded to it there. Tell us about your entrepreneurial endeavor right now.
Yeah. So what I do at the moment is I am a fractional operations partner, pretty much. So I worked with founders and business owners, so who first want to grow their business, yet are struggling, usually wearing several different hats, so 7 positions all at once. And they're working all day, every day, which is pretty much almost any entrepreneur that I know. And they're fighting probably daily fires. And the most important one, they haven't had a vacation in probably that they can't even remember when they had one. So I come in and do the following, right? I make sure that their operations, so their backend is systematized and can actually run without them. So they can go on vacation. And then I allow what we already talked about, the founder to be in their zone of genius. What they do best? What's that? I always ask them, what's the $400 per hour task that you do that can make a difference? And then everything else, leave it to me. and I'll actually make it happen pretty much. And I will systematize everything so that you can only focus on that and leave everything to me. And then as a result, they reclaim their time. Usually it's going to be, if they're working most of the day, they're going to be reclaiming like 10 plus hours per week. And we're also going to be increasing their profits because they're actually doing the high-end, high-level impact jobs. And depending on the agreement, I also lead their team for them. And the last one is I'm going to send them on a 2-week vacation to prove that to them that the company and the business can work without them.
We're getting into business tactics, but brilliant marketing. One of the things I want to point out to anyone in the audience who, and I don't come across Blaz as a expert marketer, but it's funny if someone was like to randomly meet you and you had 10 seconds to say what you did. I help people that run businesses who haven't gone on a vacation in 5 years. That alone is just like the ultimate, when I say slap in the face, of getting someone's attention. And then you back it up by saying, I'm going to not force you to go on vacation, but I'm going to show you, that you're based in Slovenia. Are you primarily working with businesses in Europe, or do you, based on the virtual world, are you helping people in the United States?
Funnily enough, my clients are all in the US right now. I can work everywhere in the world pretty much, as long as I don't need to travel there. If somebody wants me to pack me up to the US and pay me and all of that stuff, no problem. But I do work usually with service-based founders, the ones that are online, and pretty much it's easier for all of us. And I can work from my home, from my office, which is amazing.
That's awesome. Do you see this? Are there any barriers to you working locally per se, or is it just you feel you have more like relationships established here in this country? How does that work out?
Yeah, so I definitely have more relationship established, and based on my background, my profile being a West Point and the military, usually that kind of portrays more to the US mind than the European one. Because if I talk about this in Europe or specifically in Slovenia, they're going to be thinking that the only thing that I did in the military was shooting people and running around, I don't know, chasing whoever. Me trying to explain that to them, no, that's not true. We are doing a lot more things. It's just like generally more aligned with the US, Canada, and the Western part of Europe that kind of understand what's happening. And I would love to work with people and companies from Europe, but at the moment that just hasn't happened yet. And probably because I'm also marketing more into the US.
No,
and
it's good. I mean, I just wanted to clarify that anyone joining us early on might be saying, "Well, Blaz he's a European entrepreneur guy," but no, it's nice to know that when we're closer to wrapping up, we'll certainly want you to give your coordinates in terms of how people can reach out. One of the things you said that caught my ear in terms of positioning was, what you asked them, what is that $400 an hour? So there's you cutting right to the chase of saying, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, what is it that when you're doing X activity, this is moving the needle, and you're using the $400 thing as well. Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because what's $400 for you may not be the same as $400 for me. Because one of the things that when you have a business owner, right? So specifically, a lot of the times that I'm working with are coaching, consulting, and stuff like that, right? So for them, I want to be in front of the client because I can build a client. Everything else I do, following up, writing that email, or doing some admin stuff, is a $20 or even a $10 per hour work. But let's say for me, that one is where I make my money, right? I make sure that everything is automated for you, but that's a $400 an hour task for me because it's all relative, right? What we actually do. Yeah. And overall, the founders, you should be working on $400 or even $500 per hour. And if you focus on that, what you said, right, it's don't work on your weaknesses, work on your strengths and apply those strengths, because there's a reason why they are our strengths, because we're good at them. And we can learn a lot more. 1 hour working on the things that we're good at versus one hour working on things that we're bad at is going to have a lot higher results with the parts that we're good at. We're not going to be moving the needle at all on our bad things. That's why we hire people to do it instead of us.
One of the real problems I can only relate to our culture here in America is, and I think I felt this growing up, you, oh, I better be good at a lot of things. And again, going back to reading and loving the effect authors have on me and reading a lot of entrepreneurial stuff, another person I read talks about the relief a person can have when they say, Blash, I suck at blank. Now, I've said this to people in conversation, and you almost get like this reaction of,
Yeah.
And there's just something in the, what is it about how we've gotten ingrained here? And I think this is obviously changing over time. Things evolve. Any men in this audience who are torturing themselves by saying, I have got to be great at an immeasurable number of things, it's a rough way to go after things. So here's a last question we'll ask in this area. Let's talk to the person out there whose maybe a career is challenging to them and they've thought about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Blush, talk to that person and say, if you are to think about starting your own entity, here are a couple things you should think about before you make a decision.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, think of it in terms of 3 P's: what you're passionate about, what you're proficient about, and whether that endeavor is profitable. And go deep into each one of those. Right. So I'm passionate about operations. So talking for myself, I'm really good at leadership. I know I've been doing it for 20 years in 6 different industries. So I have something there, right? Then I go in, am I passionate about this? Of course, I am passionate about leadership. I really enjoy operations, automating stuff and seeing, hey, this task has gotten me from doing it for 10 hours a week to 2 hours per week. And then is it profitable? I guess that a business owner or somebody who I can save 8 hours per week on a specific task is probably going to pay me at least some money for my services. And so this is the way to think about this. And when all of these 3 combine in the middle, this is where, if you're thinking about going into that business, this is probably where you're going to be able to succeed. Of course, they have to go down a lot deeper, like what I said right now, but this is like the methodology to apply. And when you have all of those 3 P's intersecting, and if you're feeling good about doing this, just go for it. You're going to fail probably the first time, second time, third time. You're going to redesign your entrepreneurship in your journey. I've done it like a few times already, but you will not succeed if you won't fail.
That is right up there with the, I need to learn how to do everything. And that is, wait a minute, Blaz, you're saying that in this world of entrepreneurship, I got to use the F word. I've got to fail. And but I'm not trying to, I don't want to make light of that, because I think crossing from the employee to the entrepreneur world involves, go back to what you said 20 minutes ago with the rejection of rifling out resumes and not getting responded. That's failure in some form.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurship involves, the only thing I would add too, and if you have another thought on this, is, so you asked the person to walk through that 3P process. Great advice. Would you also suggest they reach out and talk to some existing entrepreneurs?
Oh, absolutely. If you can, go and just do that. Like, I would presume that the majority of people are in some networking groups or whatever they are, and just go and talk, ask them, hey, can we jump on a call for 20, 30 minutes? I just want to pick your brain or something like that. And in the majority of cases, unless you're in a really shitty networking group that people don't want to talk about, they will love to go in and answer some of the questions. So I've been doing this. So I started this business in January, right? And for these past 3 months, I've been just talking to the networking group that I'm in and just having conversations, telling them about this. And now when you said, hey, that I did a great network marketing, like presentation of myself, I rewrote this 30 minutes before we started. because I didn't like my previous one. I got feedback on it from some people, and I'm like, okay, let's try this new one right now and see, does it stick? Does it feel good when I'm saying it out loud, right? What is Michael's reaction going to be? Cool. Then I will redo it again over and over again.
I always say to people, get the Word document out.
Yeah.
And as you just said, accept the fact that this is a fluid document. You're going to write something out today, like it today. You may hear, whether it's you, Blaz, or somebody else saying, hey, I just heard the way they introduced themselves or they talked about their business. Oh, that just gave me an idea. Let me go back in my Word document and go back. And I think that's talk about measuring your own growth is
Yeah.
saying to yourself, yeah, I introduced myself this way in January, but on
Yeah.
March 13th, I introduced myself this way. Now, and as you just said, it's got to be in your own words, your own
Yeah.
the way you present things. But we could go off on a huge
We
tangent.
could.
What I want to do in the remainder of our time together, though, is in your bio that you were kind enough to send to me, you spoke directly to the mission of this group, and that was, you said you're always willing to talk about anything that's been part of your mental health journey
Yes.
and trauma. Mental health, trauma, those are terms we use in Men Seeking Freedom because mental health is very important. And
Yeah.
whether we like to acknowledge it or not, we've all dealt with some level of trauma. So tell the audience has heard kind of an outline of what you've done in your life, but
Yeah.
where and how, or where have you run into the real challenges that you can share with the audience that you think
Yeah.
would benefit them?
So one of the things, right? So just to create a like bottom line where I'm coming from, like I've been heavily abused as a child, so psychologically and emotionally, right? And all of that has been a constant throughout my pretty much life. Where it showed itself the most was that I was always helping other people, giving my whole energy out, but then I never had energy for myself. And coupling that with that I am an empath, I do feel so your emotions, even right now where we're talking and everybody else's, right, in the room and stuff like that, was even harder because as men, and I know it's changing a little bit now, but not as much as, hey, you have to be tough. You can't show your emotions. Why are you crying? Are you a crybaby? Oh, you're crying like a girl. And all of those preconceived notions or projections that people have. Even let's say my dad was talking to me, hey, why are you such a wuss? Like straight up. He legitimately, I can still remember it. He showed me a picture of myself. He's like, why are you like this? Why are you unhappy? Like, why are you such a wuss and everybody else is happy around you? And I'm like, I couldn't understand that. And that legitimately it can destroy you for years to come. And as well as we're men, we don't want to talk about this. We're afraid of talking about this and also thinking that we're alone in this endeavor, that we're the only ones. Everybody else around us is super happy. Everybody has everything figured out, and we're the only ones suffering on the inside, and we're pretty much completely empty. And that's how I felt like pretty much the majority of my life, right? Even though you may see my career, like when you were reading our bio and when I was presenting myself, holy shit, like Blaz is amazing, like his career is like up the roof. But on the inside, I felt empty. And this started to really change 3.5 years ago when I pretty much hit rock bottom and I started going to therapy and finally understanding who I was, what was happening to me in the past, and then slowly resolving the trauma, the triggers that are actually that were causing the trauma and my reactions to all and every interaction, to the fact that I'm here now and talking about this. And even if we met 6 months ago, I wouldn't be comfortable talking about my mental health journey. So now I'm there and I know I can help others, specifically men here, that usually we're not allowed this, I would say, freedom to express ourselves because we're going to be branded as weakling. You are just insert any word or anything that you've heard about men talking about this kinds of things, right? And the last thing that I just wanted to say, yeah, so sorry, is like I can see the progress I've made in 3.5 years, right? I always go and reflect, where am I right now versus where I was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 1 year ago. And then I do the most extreme one, where I was when I was at the military academy and where I was when I was like around 12, 13, 14 years old, to see the big difference.
I'm going to do a quick tie in to business and mental health. One of my mentors in business says quarterly, look back on the last 90 days and what did you accomplish that you hadn't done before? So go back to your own situation in terms of mental health, where you can actually start to measure where was I 90, or so whether it was 6 months ago or 90 days
Yeah.
or whatever. It's nice to not just, it's easy to get caught up in the moment with what you're dealing with. But I think as you're referring there, it doesn't hurt to step away. Some people do it through journaling, Blush,
Yeah.
of if you journal anything, you can go, look what I was writing on around the first of the year, roughly in December, and
Yeah.
look what I'm writing now. Here's a question I want that will benefit, if you're willing to answer it, that
Yeah.
I think can benefit this audience. So you said it was approximately 3 years ago that
Yeah.
you started.
Yeah.
What happened just before you made the decision to do that? Was there an event? Was it an
Yes.
accumulation? Is it, and if it's something sensitive, I'll leave it up to you as to
Oh,
whether you want to share it or
yeah.
not. But there's usually that, I think guys who are listening to this might be saying, I've heard people refer about going to therapy, but that first step seems like a giant one, and I don't know what I would
It is.
say. Can you talk
Um,
about that?
yeah. So first, this is not me selling anything, but I have a YouTube channel specifically where I talk about legitimately all of that stuff. Like just my healing with Blaz, like my thing, I'm talking about why I went to therapy, how I went to therapy. I'm just gonna put in the cliff notes here, right? Is so I knew that I would need to go to therapy at one point or another, but I was always postponing it, right? And then the feeling that was in my body at that point was just like something was, I don't know, going wrong in my chest area. Like everything was like so heavy, almost like you had a 60-pound weight on me, right? And the actual day that this happened was I got a little bit too drunk at work, so my girlfriend had to actually pick me up from work. And me, as I was, I didn't want to leave right away, so we left during the nighttime. And then I was all my whole rowdy self and all of that stuff. And my girlfriend then triggered me with some of the stuff she said, and which was alluding to she acted the way my mom would react in the past, which kind of sent me into a spiral of being really nasty and angry and all of that stuff, right? Then all of this happened, so I don't remember a lot. So I remember the majority of it, but not everything, because I was pretty blacked out drunk at that point. And then the next day I just felt like shit, like completely. I thought that my relationship was going to be over. So we were at that point living together, and we've been together for at that point for 2.5 years. We're still together after six years. Thank you. But at that point, it was like I need some help. I don't know how to live with myself after this. I don't know how to improve myself. I can't help myself with just reading books or just listening to something. I just need help. And at that point, my girlfriend was so amazing that she also found a therapist for me. She knew one of her classmates was actually she just got her therapy license, but that person knew of a therapist that she worked with before. I would have never have been able to find that therapist by myself, because she doesn't even, you will not, even if you typed her name in right now, there is no trace of her, because she only works from references and referrals, and she has a big ass line of clients waiting for her. And yeah, and at that point I started what to say in therapy, right? Because everybody thinks, oh, I need to say this, I need to say this. I thought about this for the first month, but then in the end, when you're there, just talk. Your subconscious is going to talk, your therapist is going to guide you, and whatever comes out is the only thing that you need to do is trust yourself and trust the therapist that they want the best for you. And everything else is going to follow from there. The therapist knows what they're doing because they're good.
We have, boy, there's a lot of great stuff there. There's a TV show that just ended in America called Blue Bloods, and it's about an Irish Catholic family, all in police. And the father, Tom Selleck, is the actor. He was very resistant to talking about the pain in his life. And they had a great character in the show who was the therapist. And so he's dealing with this obstinate older man with more pain that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And just he in the and I and the therapist, this is even in a TV show, he said something I'll never forget. The therapist says, "Sir, the happiest person on earth needs 5 minutes to unload about something." And I just
Yeah.
thought, so you're right about the fact that a therapist, just by sitting down, "Hey, Blash, how you doing today?" You might be able to just at that moment in time rattle off, "You won't believe what happened to me this morning." The
Right.
other thing I want to point out to you too, you had the same benefit I did 30 years ago when I was introduced to therapy. It was an ex at the time, now an ex-girlfriend, but it was a girlfriend who had approached me and said, "Would you consider going to
Mhm.
therapy?" Because we were having our issues. So
Yeah.
thank you for going there and sharing a little bit about, and one other thing too, I'm not a therapist by any means, but when you just told a little bit about your upbringing
Yeah.
and how things you were exposed to, I think the other thing we can say without being a therapist is sometimes the pain that we deal with in life comes from people who have their own pain
Yes, it does.
that they may or may not have ever cared to know about. That's a different story.
Yeah.
But I think it's very common for a man who's feeling pain or wounded from something to initially think, I this is all about me, going back to the failure thing again. This is me
Yeah.
failing. Did you, I'm assuming you were able to process
Yeah.
where did a lot of this, without indicting
Yeah.
anyone here, but where did
Yeah.
this all originate within me?
It originated from my parents, pretty much. I've already established that. And to your point, when you were saying, right, they also had their own pain and all of that. And when you've gone through therapy, I call it like a sinus curve of like positive emotions, negative emotions, hating, understanding your family, and doing all of that. Because like I'm still at that point, and I know that apparently in at one point or another, I'm not sure that I'm gonna probably forgive my family for that. Let's say I'm not there yet, and that's completely fine, right? Because my therapy I know is probably gonna last another 10 years, if not more. But what I focus on is specifically on myself. I don't legitimately at this moment care about why my family did this, what was their reasoning behind this, because I do understand it's generational trauma, specifically if you go back in where we were, like my great grandparents fought in World War One, like my grandparents survived World War II, and all of that other trauma after with communism and all of that stuff was then portrayed to my parents. But at this point, I don't care, because if I try to understand what they were feeling and why they were acting like this, is I'm going to try and figure out what their therapy was supposed to do. I need to understand what my triggers were, what I was feeling, and then correct it for myself so that the energy that's still pent up in trying to just mitigate the traumas that I have still locked somewhere in my subconscious brain can be released, and then I can live my fulfilled life, whatever I want my life to be.
Good for you. Yeah, and I respect what you said about we can only, as my therapist says to me, deal with your own shit.
Yeah.
And but the key point to somebody who maybe has never walked down the road at all
Mhm.
is to first say, whether it's parents or whomever, something in your life has contributed to something causing discomfort. Yes,
Yeah.
you want to work at
Yeah.
being a better person today. That's obviously
Yeah.
key to all of it. But I think just in knowing that, hey, I'm not alone. Other people deal with stuff
Yeah.
that came before us. Before we wrap, tell us. I'm looking behind you, and I'm
Yes.
seeing a couple of headwear items.
These two, right? Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about
So
that.
this one is from West Point. It's the cadet gray hat, which we wore specifically during the winter times for more of the official functions, right? So if we had, let's say, an army football game, which we had to go. Unfortunately, I don't like football, American football, so I was suffering every Saturday that I had to be up at the stadium.
You've just lost half of our audience.
I know.
I'm kidding. I'm
It's
kidding.
click down. I'm not watching this podcast. Listen to that podcast again. But so this one is the formal one. is the one that we used for our parades, right? The only thing that it doesn't have right now is that plum that has like almost like peacock's plum like that. It's on top because I just took it out, took it off into a more secure location. But yeah, those ones we used when we're parading. And if you just put in West Point parade, you're gonna see those uniforms still,
Well,
and they're still
Blash,
the same.
you are a fascinating character. I'll tell you that
Thank
right
you,
now, and
thank you. I appreciate
I'm
it.
so thankful you joined us. So let's talk your Blash coordinates here. You made the reference to your
Yeah,
YouTube channel. So for the men or women wanting to share this with
yeah.
men watching this or listening to this, where's the best place to find Blash online?
Yes. So if you're looking at like mental health and all of that, like it is my YouTube channel specifically for my mental health. If you're looking for either business or just to connect with me, the best one is to go to LinkedIn, to my LinkedIn profile, and just hop in, connect with me, ask me, hey, saw you here. I would love to hop on a call with, I pretty much hop on a call with anybody, unless they're trying to sell me right away something. Then I
Yeah.
just block them. So yeah.
But Blash, on YouTube, is it
Yes.
under your name or did you give a name to your mental health work?
It's just healing with Blaz. It's if you type this in, you will find this. You may find my other two channels, which I specifically talk about leadership and my business pretty much. So yeah, I'm crazy. I do have three YouTube channels that I just post because I enjoy talking.
Here's another thing to add to that. So thank you for sharing that. By the way, when I post this on the Men Seeking Freedom, all of your coordinates will be listed with the episode. But another reason to reach out to Blash is he's been willing to endeavor to go into the world of YouTube, which is starting to be like McDonald's customers in America. I don't know about over in
It is.
Slovenia, but no, but just there's another reason to say, Blash, I saw you. Just tell me about your philosophy on. I love your mental health stuff. How are you applying YouTube, that type of thing?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Blash, thank you, sir. I hope we can.
Thank you.
I hope somewhere down the road we'll speak again. To those who
Hopefully.
are watching this episode, please share it. We've got a lot of good that came out of everything from employment to Balazs's personal challenges that he went through and the great advice and the great outcomes it seems like he's experiencing. So please share this. By the way, please always go if you'd like more information about Men Seeking Freedom. Ironically, we use the website menseekingfreedom.com, and I will see you on the next episode.